Ryan Lawrence covers the Phillies, PhillyVoice.com, and he joins us now as the Phillies finally picked up a win after a rough stretch there, Ryan. But, there are some positives, and you like to look about a month and a half into the season of some of the positive things that you see being around this team from day to day that sometimes get overlooked.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that you have to remember about the last week and a half, they played some pretty good. I think if you ranked the teams and where you expect them to finish and who you expect to be in the NLCS, I think the Cubs, the Dodgers, and the Nationals would probably finish 1, 2, 3 in some order. So, I'm not saying that they should lose all the games against those teams, as they almost did. But yeah, I mean, the Phillies are what they are, and the Cubs and Nationals and who else? Dodgers. Yeah, they are who they are. So, it's kind of just bad scheduling in a way. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't all bad. They had the lead in on that trip, the Chicago-LA trip. They had the lead in every one of those games except for one, I think. Yep. Or might have been all of them. I think they might have the lead in all of those games. So, there are some positives to take. They're battling. But yeah, I mean, when you compare them against the Nationals or the Cubs or the Dodgers, they're going to come up short.
Yeah, the schedule, you mentioned it. They played like the Nationals. They had a lot there with the Nats and the Mets to kind of start things off. Two teams that now the Mets season has kind of taken a little turn for the worse here, but they had World Series yeah, right. They've had World Series aspirations at the start of this year. The Cubs are obviously – so you're right. They have had a really tough schedule here. If there is something – the bullpen is the obvious thing here, right? If there's something that could get better for them to be more competitive and maybe, give us a season that many people maybe weren't expecting. Can that bullpen get better, though? Do they have answers anywhere in the organization on this current roster?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the bullpen. I think that they all just kind of need to settle into roles. And last year, it happened quick. Even though the first week of the season was kind of a disaster, they did fall into the roles pretty quick. Once Genmar Gomez became the unlikeliest of closers and nailed down the job, everybody else kind of fell into place, and all of a sudden Hector Neris was one of the best eighth inning guys in baseball, and again, everybody had their role. And when you don't have those roles established, yeah, it's a little bit tougher to kind of iron out and to get everybody in sync. And I think that's just taken longer this year, but I think that they do have the talent. And I'm not going to say that all 7 or 8 guys in that bullpen are major leaguers or whatever, are shutdown reliever type guys, but they surely have talent. I mean, we saw what Hector Neris did last year. He's just had a little bit more of a struggle this year, and that's fine. He's a young reliever in terms of major league experience, so you can't expect him to be bulletproof his entire career. Eddie Ramos, I don't think he was even in the big leagues this time last year. He's a guy with a big arm. The lefty, God, that's terrible. I'm forgetting his name, Rodriguez.
No, that's Jolie.
Jolie
Rodriguez. Yeah. The one that they got for Bastardo. He looks like a mini Bastardo. And, Antonio Bastardo was a pretty good reliever when he was at the Phillies for the most part. So, I mean, I think that they have pieces. Neshek's a good veteran. Benoit's a good veteran. And they have a good mix of veterans and of young guys. So, I think that the talent is there. It's just a matter of everybody kind of getting into established roles, because that really is an underrated part of a bullpen. Guys are just more comfortable when they know when they're pitching and they have the role established.
Ryan Lawrence with us, talking Phillies baseball, PhillyVoice.com. Ryan, what roles? So we're talking about roles in the bullpen. I'll let you play GM or play Pete. How do you stack those guys up in the bullpen? What do you envision being that best setup for all the guys in the bullpen? How would you stack it?
I'd put Neris in the 9th inning. I mean, he had a hiccup here and there, but again, you look around baseball, there are few guys, even the most shut down of relievers. Even I think Mark Melancon, who's had a really good run, in his first year with the Giants so far. I don't know if he's walked a batter yet, but I think he had a bad first outing of the season, and everybody's kind of like, oh no, the guy we spent all this money on. So I think that closers, no one's perfect. So I think I would just throw Neris there, let him figure it out, let him get the job done. Eventually, the talent's just going to win out. The guy has a big arm; he can do it. So just leave that alone. Have him pitch in the 9th. I would put Benoit in the 8th. I think Benoit is, you look at his numbers in the last 5-6 years, he's been as good as or as consistent as any reliever in baseball, and he's pitched in late innings. So I think he would be a really good setup guy. And then I'd let everybody else kind of fall into their roles. I think that Edebrey Ramos and Joely Rodriguez can handle the seventh, as can Neshek. And Neshek has that, funky delivery that, it's just another kind of different look for opposing hitters. So I think with those 5 guys, I think it's 5, that's a pretty good combination from 7 to 9. And you just mix and match, I think in the 7th and even into the 8th if you want. But, I'd probably leave it alone where I'd have Neris in the 9th, and for the most part, I'd have Benoit in the 8th.
Ryan, Neris seems like he's been going back to the splitter. Has he found that pitch, and could that lead to more success for him as a closer?
Yeah, I think that's, he just has to – look, everybody kind of has their bread and butter pitch if they're a late-inning reliever, and you kind of have to trust it, and you kind of have to go to it. And I can understand you don't want to be predictable, so there are times you're going to veer from it and, want to show your fastball more just because, again, you want to keep hitters guessing a little bit. But it would be kind of like Brad Lidge, abandoning his slider. It's not smart. That's your out pitch. The same thing with I was watching Ken Giles over the weekend. Ken Giles still has that nasty slider. He should use that. He has the up. If you have a great fastball, that's good too. But your fastball is going to look that much better when you're throwing your out pitch more often. And so I think that's with Neris. He just needs to go back to that splitter and be using it a little bit more often. But again, it's just a maturation of a young pitcher. I think that he understands that. But it just didn't work that way in L.A. And he paid for it. And like anybody else, he learned a lesson.
Arent Altherr with a pinch hit home run. Is it safe to say that the wrist issues are behind him?
Yeah, it's funny because when he was out of the lineup, I guess it was the first day on Saturday, I went over to him and I said, "Are you okay? You're out of the lineup," which surprises me a little bit. And, I did see you landed a little awkwardly last night. And he goes, "No, I'm fine. And then 5 minutes later, Pete's like, "No, he told me he needs a break." So, players are always going to say they're fine. But yeah, he hit that 3-run homer last night. So obviously he's fine. It's not like it's something that he's trying to hide or play. He probably just hurt it a little bit. Like, even if it was a minor sprain, we've all had minor sports injuries over our lives, some more recently than others. But yeah, I think, he's proving he deserves to play every day, and good for him, because I remember writing at the first week of the season that he probably deserved to get a longer look, because I didn't think last year was very fair in terms of, he missed all that time after having wrist surgery. When he came back, he wasn't himself. When you don't swing a bat for 3 months, it's tough to just jump into major league pitching after, a week of rehab and expect to have success. So just the nature of where this team is, they're rebuilding. They're trying to see who belongs and who doesn't. They need to play the young players and see what they have in these young players. And the same thing with Tommy Joseph. Tommy Joseph wasn't a starter last year. He needs a longer look. You don't pull the plug on him after 1 month. So where this team is an organization, they owe it to see what they have in these guys that are in their 24, 25, 26-year seasons, as opposed to the guys like Kendrick and Saunders, who aren't going to lose their everyday jobs, but if Altherr continues to hit, something has to give.
Yeah, Ryan, because you said he deserves to play every day. So do you see Altherr then as an everyday player and maybe a longer-term piece for this Phillies team?
Well, yeah, I don't want to make any rash decisions based on whatever it is, 3 weeks of sample size. And they've been very good 3 weeks, but still, that's 3 weeks. I think that's the whole point of the season, and the whole point of last season is to give all these guys extended looks and then to see if they belong. So you can't really make that decision based on 3 weeks. But, another great lesson, and look at a guy like Cesar Hernandez. This time last year, everybody's just like, this guy seems like he has a little bit of talent, but I don't know if it's ever going to click. And then, from the end of June to the end of the season, which is a pretty long stretch, 3.5, 4 months, he was one of the best players in baseball when it came to on-base percentage. He had a plus 400 on-base percentage in the last 3.5 months of the season, which I think there were only a handful of guys that were better than that. You're talking like Mike Trout and I forget some of the other names, like DJ LeMahieu. So, he has legit skills. And yeah, I think that's with all these guys. They need longer. I think Cesar is just an example of you got to give these guys a long look. And there really is no harm in it because you're not competing for anything this year. So you can continue giving guys like Tommy Joseph and Arent Altherr all the time while those guys at AAA wait their turn. There really is no rush to this quote-unquote process.
Yeah, and Tommy Joseph's an interesting guy because he wasn't even on the radar last year. Wasn't on the 40-man. He basically played his way. They couldn't keep him off the roster. Now it helped that it helped that there was a struggling component in front of him on the roster.
Right.
But Rhys Hoskins is down there. He's got 8 homers. He's hitting .337, a .423 on base percentage. You wonder how long the Phillies can keep him down.
Yeah, but like you said, last year when it was Joseph who was crushing it at AAA, the Major League roster had Ryan Howard, who, for all due respect to Howard's career, was 36 years old, and in the last year of his contract, the writing was on the wall. Where, this is a different situation. Rhys Hoskins is killing it. Rhys Hoskins deserves a long look when they're looking to upgrade this lineup, and if they're he's the best hitter they have in the minor leagues right now, but not at the expense of a 25-year-old Tommy Joseph who, wasn't even on the big league roster this time last year. Tommy Joseph was a good hitting prospect in his own right before he dealt with a lot of injury issues with the concussions and whatnot. Tommy Joseph deserves a longer look. You don't pull the plug after a month. You look at the year he put together last year in part-time play, and he had an OPS over 800, and he had 21 home runs, again, as a part-time player. So you, as an organization, it doesn't make any sense to pull the plug on that because you need to give him a long look because then you know what you have in him. And then the best-case scenario is come July or August, you have 2 really good options at first base. And then, you have assets you can trade. I mean, right now, it doesn't make any sense. What are you going to do, demote Tommy Joseph? No, you don't do that because you're not going to get the best out of him. So I think you got to give Tommy Joseph at least another 6 weeks and 2 months, to get his back going. And I tell you what, if it's end of June and he's not hitting, sure, then you could switch it around. But I think he needs at least 2-3 months. He's a 25-year-old. It's not like he's 36. You should see what you have in him before you pull the plug on him.
Spending a few minutes talking Phillies baseball with Ryan Lawrence, the Phillies beat reporter for PhillyVoice.com. We're talking about younger players, Ryan. And how about Jorge Alfaro? How long do you think Rupp gets? How long a leash is he on? I mean, I know he's not really a younger guy, but who's the long-term option there?
Yeah, I mean, Rupp's, I think, 27 or 28. Alfaro similarly was crushing it at AAA and, has that rocket of an arm behind the plate. He could use to kind of own up his other defensive skills, though, Alfaro, that is. And we all know what Rupp is, what he is. He's an okay hitter. He's a okay catcher. So I think it's a little bit different than the Tommy Joseph situation just because Rupp's got a very long look in the big leagues, and you could pull the plug on him. But I don't think you necessarily have to do that right now if you're not 100% confident that Alfaro is ready. And, for all of Rupp's, what he doesn't bring to the table, he is a major league average hitter right now as a catcher. He's not killing them. Maybe the first three weeks of the season, he wasn't doing a whole lot, but his bat's come alive since then. He's been productive. I mean, you look at what the Phillies are getting behind the plate offensively from their catchers, they're in the top third of the big league. So, again, there's no need to kind of – here's the thing. A lot of people want to compare the Phillies to the Yankees and say, well, if they called up a couple prospects, then this or that, just like the Yankees have. They don't have Aroldis Chapman on this team, and they don't have the other relievers whose name what's his name? The Betances. They don't have Betances. They don't have the same guys that the Yankees have in the rotation. So 1 or 2 prospects aren't going to turn the Phillies into contenders. I'm sorry. It's just that's not going to happen here. The Yankees also have some major league talent, like Ellsbury and some other pieces. The Phillies just aren't there. So I understand the fans want to see some new guys. You will eventually this year, but it's May 8th. Season only started a month ago. Let's give it at least till midsummer before we really bang the door on saying they need to bring prospects up.
Ryan Lawrence with us. The Phillies with an off day and going through a couple of the news and notes here. Aaron Nola expected to make a rehab start. Is there any thought that he could get back here soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the expectation is as long as he's feeling healthy and strong and that there are no issues with his back or hamstrings or whatever is bothering on any given day, that he will jump right back into the rotation. But with that said, I think that you want to make sure that he's good to go 100%. It's a long season. There really is no reason to rush things with pitchers. If you're hurting in one area, it might make you compensate, and then all of a sudden it's an arm thing, and that's no good. So, as long as Pavetta's giving them quality starts and, competitive starts, you don't have to do it right away. But, yeah, I mean, Aaron Nola, if he's healthy, is going to come back. So there's no doubt in my mind that if he has a good rehab start and, he's feeling fine, that, yeah, he could be back within the next week.
Hey, Rye, they bring Jake Thompson up. He gets some relief time the other day. Were you surprised that he was the guy they called in to go into that bullpen?
No, because they did it earlier this year with Ben Lively, too, if you remember. The thing that you have to remember when you look at this Phillies roster, the way it's constructed right now, and I say roster, I'm talking about the 40-man roster, is that the majority of the guys on the 40-man roster are starting pitchers. They don't have a ton of relievers on the 40-man roster. So the only other thing they could have done rather than called up Lively or rather than called up Thompson is they could have brought Adam Morgan back, or they could have brought Luis Garcia back. Actually, they couldn't have brought Luis Garcia back because he had just got sent down, so he hadn't even been down long enough. So Adam Morgan was the only other guy, unless you created a spot on the 40-man, and you're only going to do that if you cut ties with somebody. And I don't think there are exactly any relievers that are crushing it at AAA right now. I mean, I think I read a stat that Pat Venditti hadn't been scored upon yet. He's also walked a lot of guys. So that, it's not necessarily that he hasn't been a shutdown guy. So I think that's what it was. They were just looking for protection for that bullpen. And, if Jake Thompson's pitching best at AAA, why not Jake Thompson?
Yeah, and, he came in relief the other night. They've got also a lot of these guys that they've traded for in a lot of these deals over the years. You're at least seeing, you mentioned Ben Lively. You've also,
Eflin.
got Eflin, who has thrown very well, actually. Pavetta was a guy he was in the Papelbon deal. So there's a lot of guys you're getting a chance to at least sample, I guess. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we are seeing some of these young names. I know that it's always – I know how. Look, I like prospects too. I know how it works. You want to see the next best thing, and then once you see the next best thing, you're ready for the next best thing. You're like, I'm already tired of that guy. So I get it. You want to see the guys that we've been reading about for the last couple of years. You want to see Nick Williams and Jorge Alfaro.
JP's struggling down there, man.
Right. JP. Yeah, he is. But again, I wouldn't panic with him until I think you got to give hitters until at least Memorial Day before you really start panicking, especially cold weather. Sometimes it's hard to get going. And, the other thing is hot and cold streaks run all year. And just because it's the beginning of the year, we tend to focus on it more just because, everybody's watching baseball, I guess, at the beginning of the year. And maybe in June and July, people have kind of dozed out a little bit if the team's not contending. So, yeah, with JP, I would give him a little bit. The last week or 10 days, he's coming alive a little bit. So, until the end of May, I probably wouldn't worry too much about his, batting average and on-base percentage and whatnot.
Hey, Ryan Lawrence is with us, PhillyVoice.com. Do you sense, Rye, that Pete is getting frustrated at all with Velasquez? I mean, the home run ball is consistently beating him up. 5.94 in his last 6 strikes. Yes, the strikeouts are nice, 34, but 8 homers in 33 innings.
Yeah, that's been the whole staff, though. I mean, he hasn't been the only one. I think maybe Eichhoff's the only one that's been done a better job. And Eichhoff last year had that problem. But, it's really the whole staff that's giving up home runs. And I think the encouraging thing for Velasquez, at least coming off his last start, is he gave him 7 innings. So he finally was able to kind of manage that pitch count and pitch competitively for, more than 2/3 of a game, because that's really what you want from your starters, to give you at least 7. That way you're not straining the bullpen every day. And, yeah, did he make 2 mistakes? Sure. But even if you look at where he placed those pitches, they weren't terrible pitches. He ran into a really hot team. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him. He is a young pitcher. He does need to improve in certain areas. But, I can't necessarily crush him for the home runs against the Nationals. I mean, anybody could run out there against the Nationals right now, and they're probably going to get hit pretty hard. I mean, even without Bryce Harper, that's a pretty formidable lineup they have. I think that with Vince Velasquez, you're seeing a lot of young players, either they're pitchers or position players, is they're going to have growing pains, and they're going to have, they're not perfect, they're not finished products yet. But yeah, I think there was a lot to like from his last start too. So I wouldn't focus just on the home runs, even though that's what showed up at the scoreboard.
Ryan Lawrence with us. Phillies off tonight, but an old friend returns tomorrow. One of the most popular, underrated guys of that 2008 World Series era team, and he returns to Citizens Bank Park tomorrow night, Ryan.
Carlos Ruiz, yeah, how about that? And it's going to be weird seeing him in a different uniform, and just like it was weird to see Jimmy Rollins initially in a Dodgers uniform, and Chase Utley and Cole Hamels in a Rangers. It's all weird because those guys were kind of lifetime, or not kind of, they were lifetime Phillies. Just like it's weird seeing Ryan Howard in a AAA Braves uniform. But yeah, I gotta imagine Carlos is going to get one heck of a reception tomorrow night, and it's a shame that the weather. And right now it's nice out, but it's kind of been weird in the last week. And hopefully it'll be a nice day where a lot of people will kind of walk up and buy tickets to the game and show their love for Chooch. I mean, I wrote this when he got traded, and I posted it on Twitter again last night. I wrote in a story about it, how he really was probably the most popular player of that era. The way I described it, you have to read the story because I know that Chase Utley was very popular, and I know that some other guys are very popular. But I mean, I don't know anybody on either side of the lines that did not love Carlos Ruiz. Everybody, everywhere in the organization, there wasn't a happier guy in the clubhouse, a guy that just always had a smile on his face, a guy that always had his teammates back. He was one of a kind, and I'll just enjoy seeing him again because I consider him a friend. He was a good guy to be around, and always a smiling face, and always a nice guy to see at the ballpark.
That's tomorrow night as the Phillies take on the Mariners. That's where Chooch is now. I know the Phillies traded him to L.A., but he signed with the Mariners in the offseason. Phillies, Mariners tomorrow night at Citizens Bank Park. Ryan Lawrence over at PhillyVoice.com. Great Phillies coverage as the Phillies season continues tomorrow against Seattle. Thanks, pal.
No problem. Have a good night, guys.
You too, pal. And then Ryan Lawrence.